Art Bell was just 72 years old when he passed away in 2018, but he left a huge legacy in the world of paranormal reporting. How big? Well, just ask some of his millions of fans who listen to him religiously on shows such as Coast-To-Coast AM and also Dreamland. And John Steiger is joining us now to talk about the late great Art Bell. How are you, John?
I'm fine. Thanks very much for having me on.
Well, he's certainly a big name in the paranormal reporting world, Art Bell. So why did you decide to do this particular project on him?
Well, because the broadcasts are so interesting. It's compelling listening, and there's a lot of varied material. I mean, Art Bell covered the gamut from paranormal, UFOs, alien encounters, and all sorts of weird, strange, ghosts and shadow people, and everything that's not common in this world.
Yeah.
And we like to escape from the common day-to-day, especially at the nighttime, and venture into Art Bell's paranormal and UFO radio broadcasts. And I try and listen to them every night. I put them on. I basically sleep with them, and much to my wife's chagrin, she's not a big fan of it. But anyway, I just find the whole subject fascinating. For
sure. So we know you're doing a project. It's about Art Bell. So what are you exactly doing?
Okay, I am at the beginning stage of a website devoted to Art Bell. It's preservation of his legacy. I think there are there was, the main aspect to Art Bell was entertainment. It was commercial, profit-driven entertainment radio. However, as an aside to that, what you have is you have over 2,000 radio programs over the course of about 25 years. And there's a lot of very important data and stories and history that needs to be preserved. It's just what's the word? It's deserving of preservation, and it will be lost. Even though it's only 25, 30 years old, these things can get lost very quickly. So what I am doing is I am taking particular broadcasts, some of the most interesting, the most controversial, and the most worthy of transcription, in my subjective decision making, and putting them on this website. My website's called, the full name of it is Art Bell Files Radio Archives.
Okay.
And it's found at artbellfiles.org, artbellfiles.org. It's completely nonprofit. There is nothing for sale on the site. There's no, swag, no, just nothing for sale. I'm not looking to make a profit from it. I'm looking for, historical and educational aspects of preserving Art Bell. And it's not just Art Bell. Art Bell's very important, but the guests are incredibly important. He had guests on many of his shows, and not only the guests, but also the callers. The callers, especially at the end of the programs, he'd open it up the lines. The callers asked some amazing questions virtually on every program. And all of that question and answer back with the guests and with Art is worthy of preservation as well.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think for the first 14 or 15 years he was doing this, John, I remember clearly he never screened his calls. And as a person who's been in broadcasting all his life and spent most of it on air, the first thing you do is screen your calls before you put them on air. But I think, was it about 2006 or 2007 that he finally decided to screen his calls?
Well, I don't think he decided. I think Coast-To-Coast decided for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the exact date when the call screening began. I mean, he wanted to keep it to a minimum. I know that because he preferred not to have them screened. He preferred to not know what was coming at him, and that would bring a natural reaction to him, and it would make the show more interesting for him. And therefore, he thought, if I'm more interested in the show, then it will be a better show because I will have a better back and forth with the callers. The guests will have a better back and forth with the callers, et cetera, rather if you know what's coming up.
Yeah. He had a policy, and he decided to be open-minded about anything his callers would bring up, but he has admitted that he didn't necessarily accept all the claims that were made on his show.
No. He presented many things, and I do have a web page for what I call tall tales, and those are very suspect claims, at least to me. Now, whether and the same policy goes for Coast pretty much today, but Art would put things on that he wasn't necessarily certain as to their verisimilitude, but
Mm-hmm.
he felt that they had a good chance of being entertaining, interesting radio. And that, the listening experience is what he was really going for. And that's why, that's where the unscreened calls come in. That's where the liberality as to who could and would not be guests on the show. It was very open. He played virtually anyone, except for those few people who, there were, I think, 5 people who got banned from the show. But they had been on the show and they did some things that got them kicked off, basically. Mm-hmm. So anyway, where was I going with this? The tall tales. There's some things that aren't believable, at least to me, but that doesn't make them not interesting. I mean, fiction is interesting. It's just, so anyway, that's based on my answer to that.
Yeah. Did you find that he could be hard on either his guests or callers when he needed to be?
Yes. He didn't have a great deal of patience for utter nonsense. Or people calling up to badger a guest or badger him or whatever. It's not, he didn't. I don't know if you're familiar at all with a radio jock called Howard Stern.
Yes.
But okay, Howard, it's a very different experience than Howard Stern. Howard Stern goes into the just kind of off the wall, for the grotesque, shall we say, grotesque. Yeah. And Art didn't do that. I mean, he wasn't just in for shock value or whatever. He was interested in pursuing things in the world, which could. He was seeking for truth, I think, seeking truth in the world. And we live in a very strange world, as you know, Dean. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things out there, apart from the common day-to-day, which exist. and there's truth in there. Now, there's also things that aren't true. I'm generalizing here, I know, but there's things that aren't true, and then there's things that maybe like fairies, for instance. I'm not sure how true fairies are, say, but shadow being, I was witness to a shadow being, so there's something with shadow being, and ghosts. He had on the people who would record the ghosts, go to graveyards or go to haunted buildings and whatnot, and make recordings of the graves of the ghosts from beyond. And there's something to that. There's something like that lingering and whatever. And there's all kinds of these things. Like, is Bigfoot real? Is Bigfoot not real? I mean, and does it exist? It's a debatable point. That's well, anyway, there's all these different, and also, what is the extent of they don't like to call it alien abduction anymore, but it's basically alien abduction. I think that they try to, there's some alien experiencers, because they're trying to put a not make it as
right,
problematic. Although I'm personally of the opinion that an alien entity that takes you against your will and physically examines you against your will, and basically you're kidnapped, raped, etc., etc. It's hard for me to sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it hasn't happened to me. I'd be afraid. I actually fear it, and I feel great sympathy for anyone who's had to undergo that. And if they need to, in their mind, make it so that it's not such a horrific experience, then fine, then do that. If that's what you need to do, then do that. So anyway, but alien abductions and experiences. He had on all the major figures, Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs and John Mack, and Ann Druffel was one, and anyway, Roger Lear, who took did the
implants,
right, removed them, and Whitley Strieber, who was another witness to it. So anyway,
Linda Moulton Howe was a regular.
Linda Moulton Howe. Okay, I have compiled a statistics. I don't have that published yet, but she was on the most of anyone, at least at this point. I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. Before the website's about a month old, but I've been doing research on Art Bell and all its shows for about 2.5 years now. And I've got a pretty good list of broadcasts. It's 2000, I think, and 37 I'm at now, although it could grow.
Wow.
It's changed, but it's definitely over 2,000 shows. And Linda Moulton Howe was on close to 200 of them. I don't think it's going to reach 200. I think she's in around 175 to 177 now. I don't have it before me. And she was way above, and Richard C. Hoagland, was on about 150 times. And they're the two that are well over 100. No one else. The next, you go back down, then it's like Peter Davenport, Ed Dames, sorry, and Whitley Strieber are all at around 60 shows. So they're the next level below Richard C. Hoagland and Linda Moulton Howe.
Okay. John, how do you access the shows and then I mean, I know you transcribe them, but is it easy accessing them?
Yeah, what I'll say is that I recommend to people that you go and subscribe to Coast to Coast. I don't want to get in trouble with this question, but you go on Coast to Coast AM and subscribe, and you can listen to quite a number of the Art Bell shows that were on Coast to Coast and Dreamland. Those are all available there. Other than that, let's just say there's places they're on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm really not at liberty or qualified to divulge here, there, and everywhere. I will say that there's one source. You have to be very careful with the internet. Mm-hmm. There's one source that I found some shows, and but you can't access the shows without experiencing pornographic advertising.
Right, right.
So, okay. and that can lead, I'm very fearful of viruses on your computer. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you're not careful and don't go through the legitimate sources, you could live to regret it. Mm-hmm. Shall we say?
John, so, yep, sorry. I was going to say only a skeptic would have ever thought that these shows wouldn't be popular from the get-go when art first started. But you know, do you think the millions of listeners that his initial shows had were attracted to the topic or attracted to Art Bell's presentation of the topic?
The answer's got to be both. Mm-hmm. I mean, they came to love Art Bell. I mean, he was there many, many nights for years. Now, not every night. I mean, Coast to Coast didn't really go 7 nights a week, I don't think, until later in the game. But he was there many nights, and he always presented or attempted to present interesting material. Mm-hmm. Now, you can say there are some shows that I'm not that keen on, shall we say, but it's just that, you know, Art was trying to present material when you go out like kind of on the edge like he did. I mean, not everything is surefire out there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's it's some hit and miss. And there's also another thing. Some of the materials, he did a lot of people who made predictions, you know, like Sean David Morton, for instance, Daniel Brinkley, mm-hmm. Evelyn Paglini, not at first. She did the witchcraft, but she came to do some predictions. And there, Sylvia Brown was psychic. There are people who did that, and also, you know, like the New Year's shows, people would call in at New Year's for like 2 nights and mm-hmm. give a prediction. What's going to happen in 2003? What's going to happen in 2006? What's going to happen in 1997? Whatever. Okay. At the time, may have been quite interesting and entertaining. It's kind of topical and has lost a bit, you know. So I don't listen to those as keenly as I do some of the things that have more carry more weight and have more substance, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's a lot more competition too, John, nowadays, obviously, with podcasts and YouTube channels and whatnot, to shows like Coast to Coast.
Oh, well, he was a trailblazer. Art was a trail. I don't think anyone really did paranormal and UFO. I will say Long John Nebel was, are you familiar with him?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Long John Nebel did it back in New York, but it wasn't, that was a local, to my knowledge, that was New York based and not national/international. Art expanded on what Long John Nebel may have started, but he greatly grew it and brought it even more into the big time.
Yeah, yeah. John, were there any shows that were your favorites that people can look out for, when you have them all up on that website?
Well, there's a difference. Okay, you have to understand, I don't have any audio files on my website. Mine are all transcriptions.
Yep.
As far as the transcriptions of interest, I have a web page that's called Strange Rangers. And I deem the people who are listed on here affectionately as Strange Rangers. There's an absolutely fascinating one by a gentleman who gave his name as Gabriel, and he was a mercenary. So I call him Gabriel the Mercenary. He was on once. He would go to, he was from America, but he would go all over the world, particularly to third world countries, and was a soldier for hire. And he gave some fascinating, just really interesting stories about what he did in his life as a mercenary. Now, do I know that this is all true? I absolutely don't. But there's enough of a sound to it that I believe at least a good lot of it's true, or some of it's true anyway. So I don't have him in Tall Tales. And it's a fascinating read. Just going through the Harlot the Witch, another single appearance. The woman was absolutely fascinated with her evil, and she was in love with the devil. She was willing to sacrifice her child.
Wow.
I mean, and honestly, it freaked Art out. And the first time I heard it, it freaked me out. And yeah, I understand why he only had her on once. She was hard to take, but fascinating. Then just going down through John Keel. He had him on only once. John Keel is a very famous paranormal and UFO writer, but he wrote the book about Mothman,
right?
The Mothman Prophecies, and that they made that into a movie in 2002, as I recall. And Art had him on the night before the movie premiered, and that was the only time they ever talked. That they had a fascinating talk about Mothman and other paranormal aspects. And so that's very worth listening to if you can find it, or and reading what I have on my site. Another pretty famous guest that he had was Father Malachi Martin. And he was on 7 times with Art. It's fascinating every time. I've only been able so far, you have to understand, this takes a lot of time, these transcriptions. So I've managed to do one of Father Malachi Martin. I did his first appearance. In that, he went through what the entirety of what takes place during an exorcism. And to hear him, and these, I absolutely believe this. I absolutely believe he was there. I absolutely believe that a person was possessed by an evil spirit, and that Father Martin and his assistants did their best to rid the person of the spirit. And he described what that was about. And it's very intense. Now, Evelyn Paglini is on there. I don't have the best stuff of hers. I only have a very short one, which I just haven't gotten to most of hers. But she was actually interviewed by Art's wife, Ramona, one time, for a very short time. And so I transcribed that because it was short and it didn't take a whole lot of time for me to do that. But it was interesting to have Ramona on subbing for Art. I'm not sure why it was Ramona. Maybe Art was sick or something. And but they were friends. Evelyn Paglini and Ramona became friends, and it gives a taste of Evelyn Paglini and the witchcraft aspect.
Right.
It's interesting, but there'll be a lot more to come with Evelyn Paglini. Okay, David Paulides. Perhaps the most interesting appearance ever that I've heard on Coast to Coast. Now, it wasn't with Art Bell, the one I'm thinking of, but David Paulides has been interviewed quite a number of times by George Knapp. Okay, but Art interviewed him once in 2015, and they went over, the whole aspect of missing people, and it starts out missing people in national parks and national forests in this country. And then they expanded it into Canada. And then they expanded it into, there's a lot of people apparently missing in canals or something over in England, like around Manchester, I think it is. And
right.
There was like a lot of missing people over there. Paulides has been to Australia. There's missing people down there. And then it's not just people out in the, forests and the national parks. Then he was doing urban settings. And anyway, the first time I heard him on with George Knapp was utterly fascinating. I woke up and was up all night and did not, I was a wreck at work.
Yeah.
I was just a wreck. So so then I've gotten some of the books of David Paulides, and he made 2 movies. The first one's not that great, to be quite honest, but the second one about hunters, utterly fascinating. It's a great book. Movie. David Paulides, Missing Hunters. I think it's Missing 411 Hunters.
Yeah, that's it.
You should check that out if you have a chance ever. Okay, so David Paulides, fascinating with the missing people. I'll do one more. Nick Redfern, who's an Englishman. I don't know if he's.
Yeah, we've had Nick on this show a couple of times.
Okay, fine. Nick is a very interesting gentleman. I don't agree with certain things that Nick Redfern puts forth. I'll tell you that right now. I don't agree with his analysis of Roswell or with Rendlesham Forest whatsoever. I think they're completely off the mark. Okay, that said, Nick Redfern on Men in Black, which is what he discussed on Art Bell, he's spot on. It's utterly an entertaining show, if you can find the show. It's an entertaining read. Not only is Nick Redfern a good writer, he's incredibly well spoken. I mean, he gives a great interview. I mean, it's very insightful. He has a vast vocabulary, intimate familiarity with his subject. I highly recommend Nick Redfern on that basis.
Yep.
Roswell and Rendlesham Forest, major exceptions.
Yeah, we talked to Nick about the Men in Black a couple of times. I was just awestruck by the information he was giving, and And we've done quite a bit on that particular topic here. But what about, there was a show that absolutely piqued my interest back when it was happening, and Art was on the trail of the hale-bopp comet, and at one stage reported it was being trailed by a UFO, and the skeptics came out and made the claim that the Heaven's Gate people committed mass suicide over those rumors.
Well, okay, I don't. Number one, I will not blame Art Bell for the Heaven's Gate suicide. I mean, I don't. That's just fiction. That's not.
Yep.
Not.
Yep.
Okay, that's not. Now, the hale-bopp comet, though, there was. My understanding is it was a fake photograph.
Mm-hmm.
It proved to be fake, but this took place over something in the order of 6 months from the time that they discovered the comet till it was close to Earth, and you could see it for night after night after night.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any of those shows transcribed. I have it under forthcoming. I'm hopeful at some point to do that. I have it under tall tales, though, because what was being discussed was that there was an alien spacecraft within the tail of the hale-bopp comet. That is not factually true. It's
Right.
not factually true. And there was a gentleman, and I can't think of his name now. He's from, I think he's from Emory University in Atlanta. He was a prominent scholar. I mean, a college professor. I think it was Emory. It might have been Duke, but I think it was in North Carolina. But I think it was Emory, and I just, his name escapes me right now. But he was on. There were a lot of people on. I think Richard Hoagland may have been on about the hale-bopp comet. Not all the shows I've been able to find, but say if there were like 10 shows, that at least I've been able to find like at least half of them. And they make fascinating listening. So I'm all for people listening to about the hale-bopp comet, but take it with a giant grain of salt. It's just
Exactly.
it's not it's not a legitimate UFO case.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember, did Art ever, come on a show and declare that he was getting pushback from authorities on particular subjects? Perhaps he was getting a little bit too close to the bone with?
That may have been. I'm not. There's Art Bell made. This is over. You have to understand. This is over multiple decades.
Yep.
Art Bell made quite a number of claims. I mean, he had, that he left the show ultimately because he said people were shooting at his house. This was only in 2015, shooting around his house, and his family was hiding under beds and whatnot. So, I mean, that's pretty bad. But there's the whole thing that he was accused of being a child molester, and he had to go to court over that by two. He was accused on public radio about that. Then actually on two separate occasions by two separate individuals, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
One picked up on the others and whatnot. So there's a lot of, and then he also had a bad back, from when he fell off a pole when he was young. And so he'd always have problems with his back and not sometimes not being able to do the show and whatnot. I mean, he had something on the order of like 5 retirements. And the only other person I know of that's prominent like that is like Muhammad. Do you remember Muhammad
Ali? Yeah.
Muhammad Ali used to he'd be fighting and then he'd retire and then he'd come back and he's the champ again. Then he'd retire and then he'd come back and he's the champ again. He did it a bunch of times. Art Bell was kind of the same way. He would do the shows and whatever, and then there'd be something, you know, family crisis, a health issue, whatnot, and he would stop. And then, and he also had the problem with Sirius, you know, about he wasn't very happy with how that show ended up. He only did 20 some shows with Sirius. So, and then he had a non-compete, so he had to be off the radio for the best part of 2 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, perhaps the most important thing on the website will ultimately, it's not up now, but it won't, I'm hopeful this year, it'll be this year. So I have what, 4 months, 4.5 months or so. The first thing listed on the website is called Art's Radio Bio. Okay. Now, this isn't, I'm not writing a biography of Art Bell. He already has, he wrote his autobiography called The Art of Talk. And it's an interesting book. It's worth reading. Now, there's more to it than that, because that was, I think, published in the 90s. So that wouldn't cover like the 2000s of his life.
Yeah.
So there's more to it. But the radio bio is, I take what I call, a lot of them are, I call them tidbits, just short transcriptions from individual shows. A lot of them are from open lines, and it'll be Art talking about various aspects of life, how he looks at, you know, how he looks at religion, how he looks at life after death, how he looks at even political philosophy, or just various things that, you know, like reflections that he has. And also I include in there, you know, Ramona, his wife, had a tragic death. She had an asthma attack and died from it at a fairly young age. I think she was 47.
Wow.
And he did an hour on that, because he was with her when that happened. And so I transcribed that. It's all those kind of things. It's some major family events, major broadcast history events, and his reflections and anecdotes about life. And that is going to comprise Art's radio biography. I will have enough. I'm not sure if it'll ever be complete, but I only put on what I think is the best stuff. I have about 100 pages.
Yeah.
Now. I think when I get up to 120, 130 pages, something like that, and I should be able to get there this year, then I will put that up. And that will run the gamut from 92 or whenever he began, up through 2015. But it will be only, it won't be outside of the radio broadcasts. It will be taken from the radio broadcast. So if something happened in his life, but he didn't mention it on the radio broadcast, it's not going to be in there.
Right.
There's plenty of things in there that are, you know, just really interesting reflections.
Yeah. John, finally, what role do you think that art played in getting us to a point where UFOs are now almost a normalized topic?
Well, I would give him indirect credit for that. Art Bell was not a UFO researcher. He wasn't a UFO investigator. And I give great credit to the UFO investigators and to UFO, and I'm not a UFO investigator. I've done some research, but I'm not an investigator. But yeah, but he had on many of the important people like Stanton Friedman, Kevin Randall, Timothy Good, Paul Stonehill, James Fox, the filmmaker, and one I just did. A UFO investigator named Kenny Young. Have you ever heard of Kenny Young?
No, I haven't.
Okay, Kenny Young was from Ohio. Somehow or other, he managed to get the tape from the 911. 911 is, you call up if there's an emergency or whatever over here. So they had a UFO over it's called Youngstown, Ohio, which is eastern Ohio near the Pennsylvania border. And there was a UFO there in December of 1994. They had quite a number of police departments out. They had witnesses out. They had the 911 people on the phone about it. They called the FAA at the nearby airport. Supposedly the military, there was a military base, an Air Force base nearby there. Supposedly they scrambled planes for the UFO. And anyway, you hear the live broadcast of coming through of the 911 center, the police cars, the FAA gentleman on the line. And Kenny Young got this and arranged the tape and played it. Art had him play it, and then they talked about it and had audience participation on it. Now this all happened in one appearance, but it is a fascinating show.
Right.
You listen to that and you say, my God, the UFO has to be, because there's no other. The skeptics are saying it's stars and whatever, but it's too low to be a star. At least at some of the time, the cops may have been chasing the star, but towards the end. But at the beginning, it was way too low. It just, it had multiple colors. Witnesses from various parts of this small city, Youngstown, Ohio. So anyway, but you hear it real as it happened. It's not, reconstruction, it's the actual evidence.
Yep.
And so Kenny Young played this. I've recently, it's the last thing I've fully transcribed. I don't have it up yet, but it will be fascinating. And again, if you can find this Art Bell, Kenny Young interview, he didn't interview him until 1999, so about 5 years after. And then the tragic thing about Kenny Young is he was in his 20s and early 30s.
Right.
He was in his early 30s when this happened. And then don't you know he went and got leukemia and passed at, I think he was 36 or 38.
Wow.
Something like that. I mean, he died in the early 2000s. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact facts right here before me, but tragedy that he would be taken so young. But at least he got this transcription together of the UFO chase. It's called Trumbull County, Ohio. Trumbull County.
Trumbull County. Okay.
Trumbull County. Yes. And it's not that well publicized. It's amazing. I mean, for as good as it is, it's not that well publicized.
Might be one we can fish for a little further on this.
I wish Kenny Young was alive and could be on your show.
Yeah.
I mean, he should be if he didn't have the damn disease. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, John, we've covered quite a bit there. The website address again is
artbellfiles.org. Artbellfiles.org. Like, think of X-Files, only it's Art Bell. It's
okay.
Artbellfiles.org. It's not .com.
And we'll have it listed below this video as well, and also on our website. But John, fascinating discussion. We could talk all day about Art Bell and the interviews he did over a number of years. But keep us posted, And let's hope people make this site one of their, first stop destinations, especially when you're sitting around doing nothing and you want something pretty interesting to read. Read through some of Art Bell's transcripts.
And at no cost.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Great, John. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Not a problem. John Steiger joining us today.